aspire to what?
One day, hopefully, make an impact in my community, either in government work or in nonprofit.
And to be a president of the United States. But so it's incredible. John came to me when he was a sophomore and he said, I want to dance with the Tulsa Ballet. I said, let's make that happen. So we did it. So it's incredible the degree to which this young man aspires to greatness, aspires to leadership on the state level. It's so proud. And so the proclamation that I have is from State Senator J.D. Nolan. And I will present that to you at school.
Yes, sir.
Sean is an honor graduate, going to graduate this year with a very high GPA. And, he's one that makes us proud. I've heard you say many times you go anywhere from Santa Springs and he's yourself. Mom, going to Columbia?
Yeah.
She's okay with that?
Yeah. I think she's still got a few months to come to Texas. They like to remind me of that just because I got accepted early doesn't mean that I'm anywhere close to done yet.
We think it's what you do. So it's pretty special. And look here, this is what was written about you. So cool. You guys can take a picture. Oh,
One, two, three.
smile.
One, two, three. And when we go back and forth between being really excited and panicking just a little bit.
What promised him I would go to New York and check.
Oh, check on.
We could do that. We can do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. I'm so proud of you. We've watched this young man grow up through the ranks. I remember he's not a stranger to giving a celebration at the board meeting, and it's just been amazing to watch the growth. And it makes me proud. So good luck. Hopefully there'll be many more occasions where not in this board meeting potentially, but others that will receive more. So you're amazing.
Thank you, Mr. Kid.
All right, well, that's the really cool and fun stuff. So if you would like to exit before we get into the meat and potatoes, you are welcome.
Thanks, Dan.
We got it.
All right. Discussion and review, student and parent assessment. So we'll dive into the notes a little bit. We just this week finished our mid-year checkpoint meetings, and we've met with every school year. I reminded every single one of them, and anybody that would listen to me, is today's February 1st, and we have reached the peak, and we're kind of over the peak of our school year, and what we've accomplished is, in my opinion, nothing less than amazing. I was reminded today at SSCA, one of the teachers said, Thursday's the 100th day of school, and I tell you, that's not a holiday I look for every year, but seriously, 100 days of school out of 175 is pretty outstanding. So very proud of the work. One of the things that we try to target pretty heavily is student achievement. That's our role as a school entity. One of the things that we do in our mid-year checkpoint meetings is just understand benchmarking, and not all sites are completely done with your benchmark for reading and math, but many are. And I will say, I'm going to put my notes, our checkpoint with Ms. Noel, she's commenting about the progress our students have made from beginning of the year to mid-year checkpoint, and she was seeing some really great growth, even the classes that have been quarantined, which I think speaks very highly of just the in-person instruction that's happening in the classroom. So while there is no doubt quarantines have been cumbersome and terrible for teachers and students and parents alike, the kind of progress we're making academically, I think, is worth what it has taken to keep schools open. So that was really good to hear. No doubt we have work to do. One of the conversations we had in our meeting with teachers today was about how we kind of bridge the gap. Sean and I have had this conversation between some of those that are not in person, that may come back a little bit further behind than those that have been attending. And so just kind of digging in, and we'll be figuring that out as we get the kids back. So I'm proud of our progress. It's gone, I mean, as well as I think it could have, considering the circumstances this year. As you know, we can continue our professional learning communities, our PLCs, with the early release Fridays. Sean's digging in, and he really has done, I think, a good job to get ownership to make sure we continue to use that time wisely. They're delving into science curriculum at this point, so digging deep into making good decisions about expenditure of funds for what kind of curriculum. We, as you know, adopted Project Lead the Way, which is the STEM curriculum that WebCo and the team supports for STEM portion. We do know now that that's aligned with science curriculum, that match up on the standards. So we'll be interested, I will be interested specifically to see what the team chooses as Sean leads them through that process. I think
But how's the participation been in that, in the
PLC,
getting the early release for the teachers?
that
Giving them time, are we getting participation from the majority of our folks?
requirement. So they don't get the opportunity not to participate. And Sean can speak to that probably if you would like to speak up, but I do know they're getting more productive, and it's kind of one of those processes that you have to just stay the course, because when you first start that, kind of going a little bit blindly, kind of thinking, now what exactly is the meaning, what is this doing? And he's done a really good job translating that into really focusing on student growth and achievement, and taking a peek at interventions that are not or are working, and honing into individual progresses. I don't know if you want to elaborate.
Yeah, and my mask really muffles me so bad, so I'm gonna try to talk loudly. One of the conversations that I was having with one of the grade level teams at the elementary last week was that the crux of the professional learning community is to increase academics, to reduce interventions or need for intervention, and then improve our instruction. So we're really talking through when they collect formative assessment data from their kids each week, sitting down together as a team, talking about, like, say, for instance, if Mr. Mullins and I were on the same grade level team, if his students are outperforming mine, looking at the data between the two, if I need more intervention for my kids, then the conversation to improve my instruction would be, what is Mr. Mullins doing that I can improve in the classroom? And how can I use that as a target for intervention for my kids so that they can improve? And then, working together as a team to stay on pace, stay on target, but still intervene along the way to make sure our kids are performing and not just leaving them behind when we get to the end of the unit. And people are responding to that pretty well. We have, teachers that are meeting earlier in the day before the early release so that they can get their data together, and then they can use that early release time to have the bigger conversation about intervention. So we're getting some valuable feedback from them. I will say that some people have grasped the process of PLCs very early and they've run with it, and others are still learning it. And that's where we're here to help them each week. And we meet with the grade level teams every 6 weeks, as much as possible as a district-wide team. And then we're meeting with secondary teams as well to make sure that they're still understanding the process and if they have questions.
It's been good. I mean, you always embark on a new adventure, and there's some growing pains that happen along the way. And, we try to encourage people to stay the course and kind of get over those humps. And they've done tremendous with it. And it's been very successful. And I'm not surprised that you get good leaders, and that's what happens with programs. So
Mr. Gates had a question about the adopting a science curriculum. How often are the curriculums reviewed, and how often are the different adopters kind of?
So there's an adoption cycle. It's based on a 5-year rotation. And so every 5 years, we adopt a different set of curriculum. So this year's science, and it would have been 5 years ago that we adopted science. I think it's 5. Am I wrong?
It's
6?
6.
So this year's science, I have to tell you, it's been a little tricky because it's virtual this year. And so we have a committee meeting for science curriculum, and of course, those things happen typically. We would have a vendor come in, They would illustrate the curriculum, teachers would come to the committee that's developed based on one from each school side that comes and meets and makes that determination. They vote as a side in a peer rubric. And so at some point they stay in, quote unquote. It's a process, not one that's taken lightly because a lot of dollars are spent with textbook adoption every single year. Science is going to be it typically is more expensive just because of the lab materials that you have to purchase as well. So there's a lot of hands-on stuff. Again, Sean, if you want to elaborate on the process.
It was a difficult process, it has been a difficult process because, as she said, typically the publishers will have a caravan where the teachers will go out and see the curriculum. This year it was a virtual caravan, so they were able to watch. And it is a lengthy process, and it is for science definitely more intensive because a lot, like just for instance with the elementary curriculum, each of those publishers has a lot of lab time built into the curriculum, and that requires a lot of kits, which increases the price of the content. So that's one of the things that we're looking to like structure across the district. You know, we definitely, as far as elementary is concerned, want a district-wide curriculum so that there's equity built in and every child at every site is receiving the same instruction. So that becomes a chore when you've got 5 elementary sites. And so we meet a lot. We meet once a month for the most part. We've met twice a month in some cases just to have conversations about what it would look like to choose. And the caravan ended last week, so now we're going to be in that phase of going through a rubric soon to choose.
Next on my list is our virtual academy. I think that begs some discussion. We're still carrying a caseload of over 1,000 students in virtual academy. Some of those are blended, no doubt, but we have about 230 elementary. The magic for us, I think, is going to be figuring out the continuation since COVID. And I don't even know exactly time-wise what that means, really. We're in this period where, you know, vaccines are coming out and we're seeing a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. So hopefully we're more back to normal. But Standing the other day, we got a sweater, we put it on, but the sweater's not going to go back into the same shape it was when we started it. So I think what we're trying to figure out is exactly how many people continue to choose a virtual platform versus a traditional. I think that it's become incredibly clear that in-person instruction over the course of time is probably better met and for student achievement, especially when students are little. I think that we're all kind of in this place that we think that that is the case. So we've got a lot of work to do. I think morphing back into what school was is probably not going to happen. And so we've got to make sure that we're visioning forward to make sure we design it so that we have the best in whatever world people choose. And to that end, our team put together a parent survey. We haven't pushed it out yet. We're getting ready to market our dialogue meeting for next Tuesday night. We're talking, our theme's going to be diving into the 21-22 school year and really talking about learning options and the pros and cons, and then just how the enrollment process works if you're a current versus new student, those kinds of things. So really prepping people for starting to think about what is going to be best for my child in August. Again, one of the worries is the learning gap that we know will be present. And so we haven't really discussed it in depth, but how do we create summer programming even that might encourage students that need some extra help to partake? We do our summer reading academy every year, and how do we get more kids involved? And it's just going to be tricky, and we're going to have to be very open-minded, very willing to embrace change, which we had to do abundantly this year, and improve progressing into what post-COVID education looks like. And I think that people have had a taste of a virtual world. Many obviously chose it, but it's definitely something we've had to embrace because of the nature of the pandemic itself. So lots to learn. I think because of our processes before, obviously, we more than tripled our capacity for virtual. And so we learned a lot as well, but we also had a structure set up so that it was a little bit easier for us to manipulate those learning options and give people some variation of choices. So I feel a little bit ahead of that game, but again, we're about kind of visioning forward and making it better. And there will need to be make that happen. So we started those conversations already. I think the big component last year that threw us off a little bit was the volume, number of kids, which, as you know, set us back a week for school to start, and school could get kids in the system. And so trying to figure that out in advance if we're not doing anything all. So I think the key is educating parents so they know what those are, they understand processes, so we get a good gauge on who's going to be where and to what extent. So that's been a trick.
We put a system in place where we had a effectively teacher available at various times of the day that the kids could access that teacher. Is that functioning okay?
So
Well received?
yes, no. So we have 2 elementary teachers that are there full time in our virtual academy. So they're there all the time doing some live lessons and then some tutoring and some case management too. We have a special education teacher that is there all day long, managing a lot of secondary caseload as well as learners managing some of that as well. And then we ended up paying stipends for, I believe, 12 additional tutors. Some are elementary, but mostly secondary that literally man the lab so that it's open until almost 6 o'clock every night, with the exception of Friday, closes early, so that kids can come in and get help. It's worked really well. It's anytime, again, you embark on a new method or a new system or a new journey, there's always going to be some hiccups, but I think overall we've made it really well. We've talked through how that can look next year in terms of having a person assigned to a grade level potentially at the elementary. So incorporating maybe 6 staff. So you have one that's kindergarten, one that's first grade, one that's second, to have more live lessons available specifically at the elementary. But again, these are all preliminary conversations that as we learn, really process what we've been doing, and help us make changes that are beneficial to the kids. So
I think that obviously, I think there's a confusion just in the community about the difference between, or that they don't even know there is a difference between distance learning and virtual academy. So I don't know how we can communicate that better. Even conversation this week at my own household about that with my wife. And so I think that's going to be an important piece, maybe not even like for the future, but this semester. And then, but I think we, obviously our virtual academy is strong, and there's been a lot of work for a long time on that. And so I think we're in a good place on that. And for me, and we've had this conversation before, I just think the challenge is people don't know.
yeah,
And we,
yeah,
I just think still that marketing, though we don't want that to be a part of school today, is going to have to be, we're talking about the sweater that doesn't fit anymore or fits differently. I think that's going to be a key, that full-time focused marketing,
yeah, there's no doubt.
different than we're doing it.
I agree. We've done, I think you would be surprised at how much time goes into just one-on-one counseling when we reach out to people, because we have talked until we're blue trying to describe the different kinds of learning strategies. One of the things that I think we need to do a better job of employing is just that live model, where if I'm distance learning, then I have a class, which we try to employ, by the way, where I'm live and the kids are seeing me teaching the lesson at home. And then even if it's not live, I've recorded, say I teach 6 sections of biology, for instance, I've recorded one of them and then it's available in the classroom. Because again, the beauty of Virtual Academy is the ability to manipulate my time so that I'm able to be flexible.
Yeah.
And so there's no doubt, Rusty, there's ways and places that we need to improve. We can put verbiage out and ads and talk on dialogue, talk through it till we're blue, but until you live it, sometimes it's really hard for a person to really understand exactly how that's supposed to
Well,
work.
I think the conversations are fantastic, and it's great that we're having those, but that's with people who are already engaged and wanting to know.
Sure.
So I'm just talking about to the average parent out there who doesn't know the difference between our virtual academy and we'll say the cuss word epic, right? Okay, so they don't know the difference. And the only difference they know is that Epic's gonna give them money if they do it their way.
Right.
And so I think the marketing side of it is such a key for us, for the person who isn't interested and doesn't know.
Right.
And is not already engaged in a conversation with us.
I would love, in fact, we may have Jay come and do a presentation for the board that would probably be helpful to get you to have a full clarity of understanding about that flight into leaving, say, Sand Springs to Epic or another virtual K-12, whatever it is. Our enrollment's down, depending on the day, 140 to 160 students, there's no doubt. At one point in time, I mean, everybody was reporting a downward trend in every school district in the state. That's been a hot topic across, not just the Tulsa region, but across the state. And there's so many dynamics that go into, because when you reach out personally to someone and say, hey, here's what we have, we will get people that report back. They don't want to partake of our virtual academy because we do require some effort. And so there's a lot of, you have to contextualize some of those issues. And I'm not going to say that we can't improve 100% in terms of reaching families better, which is what we're trying to do. And utilizing our resources, our counselors, our, even our registrar, our people, our support staff that do a better job of conveying that messaging. But we can't compete with handing somebody $1,200 for a learning time. We can't do that. That's for sure. And my fear, partially with what has happened this year, and I think, we had a tragedy this weekend, by the way. And I can't go into detail, obviously, but we had a tragedy this weekend. I'm worried about people that get lost from us that choose them. I think there's probably folks out there that choose the anonymousness of it. And so how do we reach everyone? You know me, I want them all. I want them all here. I want them to be in school if possible, and I want to be able to monitor all those, I call babies, but you know what I'm talking about, the pre-K to the grade 12. And
I just said, I think we all believe our product is better
sure, absolutely,
for everyone.
right,
And so, but if they don't know about it and they don't believe that because we haven't marketed it well, then it doesn't matter.
right. I understand, yeah. I get you.
The word of mouth, I mean, it's a big thing,
Right.
but
Every
can't
single
communicate enough.
Every single person that leaves the district, we're reaching out to, that we know about. And then,
There are people who live in our district that haven't been in our district.
sure, I understand.
That's the ones I'm.
Well, the other part of that is, I don't think you're gonna get 100% of your people for the school, because people are gonna make those decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I 100% agree, but I just don't think you're gonna reach everything. This is a problem that I think the pandemic has, put a microscope on so that we can see it. And at the same time, this is also a problem the pandemic has brought on that's outside of our control too. We weren't bleeding students, pardon the phrase, but prior to what we are now, but it's the case across the board. And I don't know, you're more than welcome, Sean, to kind of chime in with the marketing and the techniques that we're using, but
So one of the things that we do is we have worked really hard to put not only the verbiage out there on the strategies for startup phase about the different types of learning, but back early before all of this hit with COVID, we worked with Jay to get parent testimonial, student testimonial, and put that up on his page of the district website. And he's worked really hard to put things out on social media. The difficult thing about that is with the website being the way it is and the social media the way it is, a lot of people are looking for it.
That's
That's really difficult.
how do we make them look for us?
Yeah,
And
yeah. So again,
the other guys do it really well.
yeah,
I'm gonna leave it at that. Because the other guys have a fund that they use for advertising it. Race way more.
I understand. But we can do better.
I'm not, yeah, I'll take that. I think we can do better at a lot of things, and I think that it's in a place where you feel like you're good enough, or you can do the best you can, then hang it up. I mean, there's always room for improvement no matter what. But there's also a lot of nuances when it comes to funding sources for companies that build their capacity based on, I've got the dollars to put out for, I mean, we talked through that before with the advertisement on TV, which there's no way possible. Or with a small, we talked, through the marketing that's done in that way as well. So I'm with you. Improvement, 100%. The flat, I don't want to say quality, but the kind of marketing that you're doing a comparison with is, I don't know how you compete with people that have that kind of dollar amounts to spend. So I hear you. We're working towards improving. We never stop. We tried it at home. Any other questions about that? Okay, moving on. Lastly, there's a video thread that was linked. We were actually featured by Rosa Washington in the Tulsa Chamber speech. They came out and actually videoed at our STEM Center. And I do think we're getting some looks from people in the area. People are understanding that, trying to put Sand Springs on the map, if you will. Anyway, at the end, they filmed our engineering lab and the partnership we have with Webco. So I was really proud of that piece that was at the inaugural opening for the new year for the Tulsa Chamber, which is typically done in person, by the way, but this year was virtual for obvious reasons. Okay, any questions? Resource renovation, all right. Yes, gotcha, resource. Yeah. That takes us to finance. We, of course, I rely on Vernon Fort's newsletter. We go to, Greg and I attended a training earlier this month regarding just mid-year adjustment and state aid. I was telling the teachers this afternoon that our state aid factor is actually less than it was prior to the implementation of teacher raises. So let that resonate with you. From last year to this year, our state aid allocation is down $2.2 million. Greg and the CFO group were talking through just the mid-year adjustment of the top 30 schools. Cumulative loss was exactly the same as what Epic gained. And so that was a real kind of data point for me that said, oh my goodness, we've got some issues financially that we're going to have to work through. We're going to be very positive about how we work through those things. So we're fine. We're fine. Physically, we plan to be fine. At the same time, my advocacy efforts are going to be about how can we be better. I know the governor came out, I believe today or yesterday, with the state of the state talking about leaving the education a flat budget, which sounds good. You're not going to lose any money, you're going to be flat. But I don't think that, for instance, for shaking his head, but you've got to be careful interpreting that into a positive when we know that our weighted ADM is so much less than it has been the last 2 or 3 years. And so we're managing, we always do manage, but it would be great not to just be able to manage, but to talk about an increased revenue stream so that we could actually employ more resources for our kids. So it's the state of where we're at. Again, we budget well, and we're going to be fine. At the same time, I think that we all can be a voice that can advocate for additional dollars for education. I think we spend most of our time, I feel like, doing that every legislative season.
Not to put you on the spot, you don't wonder weighted ADM is approximately.
Oh, gosh. Mr. Arnold, it's 7,000. I don't know, Mike, I would, yeah, it's right below 1,000. Yeah, right below 8,000, based on a weighted average. I can do that though. Yeah, I'll look it up. Yeah.
Weighted median's around 78.50.
There you go. 78.50.
I do that tonight, but I forgot my Chrome machine.
Secondly, we're the ESSER 2, they're calling it funds. We're set to receive 2.6 million. We don't actually receive an allocation that comes in our bank account at 2.6 million, handled through a claim system. So we have that application we can use over the next 2 years. We've extended by September, I believe, of 2023, which will help. So federal relief is federal relief, and that'll allow us to take sparse that over 2 years so that we're not feeling hopefully the pains that we're having with finance, frankly, and how that works is much like Title I or Title II. And as we incur expenses, there's a claims process, and so we upload a claim and they reimburse us as we spend the money. So it doesn't come in one chunk. There's some stipulations around it. 15 of those, I believe, in the last one is for our continuation moderation of costs. So we're all thankful. That's the second round stimulus relief from the federal government. The first one must be extended by the end of this year, and that was a huge help in helping us make sure that we continue to do this year.
We were on the conference call with the OSSBA on Saturday, and Dr. Hines kind of indicated that the best way that most schools run do that is get some large expenditures and ask for the money early,
Right.
like utility bills, insurance
Yeah.
adjustments, stuff.
Well, I don't know if we started the first round or second round, because the second round, I would beg to differ a little bit, because we have till 2023 to spend it. And so I think you don't exhaust it all in 1 year. I think that's my opinion with us, the smart thing would be to carry it over a couple of years so that we're not in a predicament. One of the things that is helpful to know in terms of financial planning for districts is to know what your caseload is. And so we have some students that we need to get back, no doubt. However, because they operate on the 3-year high number for weighted ADM, it gives districts time to plan. And so what happens is you plan accordingly. So some of the data that we're going to be looking at in the year are what are our class sizes of elementary? How do we keep them at a reasonable size? So in our minds, early, pre-K through grade 2, we look at around 20, third through 5th grade, try to keep it around 25. And so we'll start picking that apart as well. What's again difficult about those predictions is not knowing how many kids are going to be partaking in person versus how many are going to be online. So, it's hard to predict that, is what I'm saying. Until we get a survey back and then the real numbers come in and we'll actually enroll their students, it's really hard to know how. So I run those lists for our team probably once a week. They get sick of me doing it, but I break it down into a page where I can see class sizes and we can tell. But that's going to be the way to navigate that. So, I see what he's saying in terms of big expenses, but I sure would hate to be in 2020, fiscal year 23, worrying about the ability to have staff and take care of the needs that we have. And then you hope that we can recover financially as a state by then. That's the goal. So, let's see. HGM is going so well. If you haven't had a chance, drive by. It's just like this big white building or backfill with concrete. It's still set to be finished in June, so that's good news. It's so much different than the freshman academy. There were all kinds of nuances with the freshman academy, and this is simply a. So even though it's a big deal, I don't want to underestimate how big of a project it is. It's still a lot less stressful, and we're not under a time factor of needing to get it done before August when kids come. So it's exciting watching that thing go up, and LD Hearns still continues to be a great partner with KKT and for Sheeny within every construction meeting that we have. So that's good work. So working through a plan to transition our enrollment center to the manual arts section of the old building. And that's just, as we described during the bond planning and the bond election phase, our enrollment center location is a nightmare, and it's just an attempt to make it user friendly. We know we're in a situation where we're going to have that ability for a while. We know that. We have some student activities that are still continuing to operate it. And so if we can make that place more user friendly, I think we can spruce it up. Jeannie developed a plan for us to do a little bit of facelift so that it's more presentable, getting it situated so that people can find an enrollment center. We talked through the possibility of incorporating child nutrition as well, and some old office spaces and classroom spaces, so that people have kind of this one-stop shop and enrollment and know where to go, what the next step is for, free and reduced forms, lunch forms, all that. It just makes it more user friendly. You've heard those stories I've told about families coming into the we just need it to be better. We need to be easier. And so we have a plan for that. Trying to get through a couple other things before we start that, but probably looking at our enrollment lady. We met with Bonnie today. She said, it would be really great if by summer we can start that process. So we're talking through that as well.
That is moving the front door to the front door.
The front door, man. And we're the attendance office, the old attendance office, so picture the manual arts part, where the old gyms where the cheerleaders practice, behind the offices in the front of them. Yeah. So it'll be opposite where the virtual academy is. So it was kind of in the middle. Yeah. And then I know we're not ready to talk about it really yet, but just kind of an update on our insurance for the hailstorm from last year. We were handed from our insurance company, nobody's fault really, but a big, huge packet of paper, like almost a ream, I'm not kidding you, without any indication of what site each of those roads where they were at. And so Jeannie was handed this packet.
And mine's worked on too.
Right, without knowing exactly what portion of that packet went to what side, so they had a lot of cleanup. And we're meeting Friday to just kind of discuss moving forward. We actually have a portion of insurance money in the bank right now, and so we're obviously going to have to go out for public bid on that, and we'll start the roof work pretty soon. So there was quite a bit of damage.
On the metal roofs.
Right.
Limited damage on where we have a ballasted roof. Some of the cap, even on some of those, like the old Central Ninth Grade, they recommend just replacing part of the cap of the roof, the wall cap. So not knowing where that location is, we have questions back to them for that. Most of the damage is in our metal roofs. And in all of the metal roofs they recommended removing and replacing. We're concerned about not having enough money to replace the metal once they depreciated the age of the roof. So that's the big decision we'll have to make. I did call in a consultant. They looked at all of them. They thought that we could restore them with a painted product that would give us a long life. So, but we're meeting Friday and talking with our insurance agent to see what happens if we don't do what they recommend and only do what our money allows us to do. Big decision.
Well, $50,000 deductible on a current, which sounds great, and it is. But then the depreciation factor, you have to take into account. And so, until we have all the numbers, we just need to study it now, honestly. So we're initializing that meeting on Friday. Should get some clarity. Greg called our agent actually and kind of made a flight for really that much depreciation. So I don't know that we can negotiate really, but a little bit of a build up, I'll try. Anyway, so Jeannie called them. So more to come. I just wanted to give an update of where we're at and reason for the delay. It seems like it's taken forever, but no fault of our team. Trying real hard to make some sense out of a big packet of materials that was here.
Is the parapet cap not part of the Trimco system that is, got that warranty on it, that Trimco?
It is part of the Trimco system, but the hail damage then is part of
What Trimco would do?
Trimco could do that and under their they could do the restoration and they would be willing to bid out that restoration to replace that part, yes.
And we didn't have the hail damage component of the Trimco warranty?
No, that it's not no, we just have a service contract with them that wouldn't cover anything like that.
With the high school, the end, east side, Bill, that's gonna be
That's
Same
we've
color.
we've already encumbered the money for it. I don't get me started on that one. So I will say this, Josh, I'm a little bit embarrassed that it hasn't been done yet. So we're waiting. They finally have they almost completed the sign. It's not quite ready yet. So we've mentioned it every single week and said the contractor still had some questions. Anyway, so it's on the way. We're still on it. It just hasn't been started yet. And I think they're kind of a little bit embarrassed about that. So, yeah. I will say, I still think, and I know this is aesthetics, but my next endeavor is gonna be the west end with the auditorium. If you approach the high school from the west going east, it's hideous. Just, I'm gonna say it right up front, I'm not shy about it.
And we did get a bit to paint that at least until we're ready to add the metal and the
Bid, but I held it because I really feel like it needs to match. It needs to be cladded just like the rest of the building. So I want to quote on it. I want to see what it's going to look like. It's a great look in front and it needs to be finished. And, you know, we did a good job utilizing the bond dollars to do the freshman center. That went great. And I asked you guys for approval for additional building fund money to do the east side, but I can't let it there. So when they finally get that done, then we're probably gonna try to attack the west side as well. It's terrible. So anyway,
With the metal panels or
I
something.
think it needs to match. It needs to be similar to what's up there already. What they're doing on the east side is they're framing the south face. So you'll still see the windows with the paint, which is repainted. So you'll see a metal frame around it, and then you'll clad the whole east side, and then they'll frame the north face of that same wing.
So on the east end of the high school that hasn't been painted yet, and then the auditorium, those are both concrete panels and there's a U joint and the panel fits up right like that. And then you have a metal U and then another panel. That is deteriorating. That metal is deteriorating, sliding water behind it. So really it needs to be covered with a metal. We continue to paint it, but it continues to fail like it does on the north side of the auditorium. That's what's happening. And really the only way to handle that is to recover it so water doesn't get to it.
I will say this, I use metal panel additions. So if you haven't driven back behind the high school, it is looking better than it did. They are so happy with the extra space and that looks great. I mean, I love the way that mesh and it looks and tied into the building. And then you have the auditorium. And just the auditorium, some of it's pink, some of it's, I mean, it's terrible. I just need to stop. I could just go on. Okay, moving on, empower families and women. Yeah. So again, I sent you, or actually it's in my notes here, but Mr. Trout sent out a parent-student survey for graduation. And he sent it out, sent the results in, and said, just give me help. And it's a total 50-50. There's a little bit of differentiation between the student's perspective and the parent's perspective, which, you know, students are kind of leaning toward the Navy Center, parents are kind of leaning toward the stadium. So we're going to have more discussions and more thoughtful conversation about where to have graduation. And waiting, I think, to make that decision a little bit later to kind of figure out where this whole pandemic piece is going. Honestly, I have a tendency to lean to please the kids. That's my tendency, just because their graduation and,
Well, here's my question.
yeah,
Why aren't they even talking to the teachers about it? It's not their graduation.
he wanted.
I don't think it was teachers, was it?
It was, I believe parents.
Oh, it was teachers.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, this is.
Yeah,
I can understand the parents, I can understand the students.
Yeah.
Teachers,
I think he wanted some opinions and it's
Yeah.
valid. I will say
I tend to
this.
agree with you on that.
No, don't get me wrong, I want to please the parents as well. But ultimately, the kids are the ones that walk the stage and, you know, that's a memory for them. And so it's really forward, kids and it's, you know, so to be, I guess, that.
All of it was left here before the state, not the way like.
Well, no, I know how y'all feel. It's true. And then here's the other part with May, you can worry about rain. I mean, there's inclement weather. There's all kinds of reasons why. I will say this, that all the parents didn't fill it out, just, you know, I'm not surprised. And when the kids are at school, you can say, fill this out during English class, and then you get full participation from the students. So I was good. I was glad he did it. He said, I think I'm gonna give this to Megan. That's a great idea. So There we go. Again, I mentioned this before, but Mr. Beard and Mr. Roeder have developed actually at this point a survey regarding virtual academy enrollment. Hoping we can get clarity way prior to August, so we don't have that last minute influx of students in our virtual academy. And then lastly, Ms. Huber has graciously agreed to take on administration of the enrollment center. Just wanting better processes. We met today with our team there with one of the product hopefully of the dialogue meeting next week is to make sure people understand the difference between a new student and existing student. And we just going to try to clean it up and make sure people are clear about how well they might wear. So our goal is to get our current students, we call it pre-enrollment, but that terminology is kind of confusing. It really is just update your information, make sure that's correct in the system. So our goal is to get that done by current students before the end of the school year, so we can really focus on new students in the summer. So see how that works. I know Carrie's got some great ideas in terms of how that can happen, and we started that process now, so. And then,
I guess the one thing about the virtual that I've seen, because I am dealing with it now.
Sure.
For those that don't have high-speed internet at their house, we were talking about it earlier, but, like Santana is doing it now, and he just had knee surgery, so he's laid up on the couch, and he's in school, one subject, 8 hours a day, but constantly on it.
right, sure.
And so the data that is on the hotspot, because,
Right.
you know, we live in the sticks, the hotspot lasted him about 2 weeks,
Right.
you know, and without the other one that we had, then in our phones, then, you know, he would be like, I can't do school,
Right.
you know, I'm done. And so he'd have to wait for the next month. So, I don't know if it can be a case by case deal, or I don't know if it's a plan, you know, all of our hotspots have to have this much data on them, or can you gear them toward the kids? And
My tendency is to
So-
lean toward case by case, because you're not going to get kids that might.
so I don't know, I'm just asking, I don't know if it's possible to do
So what
hotspot by hotspot
it is,
or,
it is on the Khajiit hotspots. So what we did originally is we did an assessment of the amount of data required to fully function within Edgenuity for an average working student.
sure,
And then we allotted the data to the hotspots based on that. But I do have the capability to go in for the Khajiit hotspots at least and individually allot a certain amount of data. We just didn't do that across the board because we do have some that tried to get around the rules of what the hotspots are for and used up their data on other things. But we have had some instances where I have a couple parents that have contacted me and they live out in the middle of nowhere and they couldn't do a Google Meet because that hotspot didn't have enough data. So we can individually release based on the IMEI number tied to that hotspot.
okay, that's good.
Health and safety, just a mention of our health guidance committee for COVID protocols met Wednesday last week. Discussed the quarantine suggestion by the governor a couple of weeks ago, and consensus was to stay the course. And so just wanted to mention that too. We will be reviving that topic in a dialogue meeting because we are staying the course. I will say, you know, it depends on the week. Our numbers vary. I do know, I remember today what school, I think the Broken Arrow shifted total distance learning for their entire school. And some are partial, I think Union's partial, I don't know who else, it's just, you know, ran a bit, right now we're staying open, and for whatever reason, we kind of went into, after we got clarity about how that rhythm was gonna work, if you can set up for staying open, and we've been able to do that, and so I think there were some fears that after Christmas and New Year holiday were over, after a couple of weeks, we'd be shut down, and hooray, we're not. So, well, the quarantine numbers are what I want them to be. We're still able to staff and have school open, so I'm proud of that. So I'm hoping we start seeing a downward trend. You know, with the vaccine, and I don't know, I've been pleased with where we're at, considering. Is it where we want to be? No, but considering the pandemic and what's going on in the world today, I continue to be proud of people. I'm just gonna leave it at that. So
Have we seen, a disproportionate number of, transfers coming in from TPS than earlier, I mean, than earlier years or the,
Kristen question?
okay, Kristen.
Honestly,
Not really. I don't think so, but I
not
think
a grand, like, not a grand number.
Yeah.
Definitely, we had some that as soon as that information that some of those sites were gonna go, that way, or they weren't gonna open and they were combining some sites. We got some initial transfers and then when they went, 100% virtual and they haven't been in this whole time, we received some, but, not just, I was really surprised that it just wasn't like a floodgate.
Right, yeah, that's what I
that's,
from everything on the news, you would think that the parents would be like, let's go somewhere, let's go Sand Springs.
But literally, I think there's a sign out, give us your huddled masses yearning for, regular school and in-person brick and mortar learning. But, some of them, I figured that we would have more, but we didn't, but we really pretty much took anybody that came this way. We're like, great, come on.
what is weird about that? I know we can talk marketing on, all day long, but what's weird about human behavior with the pandemic is you can't negate the fear factor of people not wanting to be back in instruction or in person. That is a real thing. And I attribute the phenomenon of not getting the flood from, say, Tulsa coming in to, there are folks that I think are pretty okay with not getting out and about during the pandemic. And so,
I look at a lot of it in Mr. D as, transportation. So think about that.
Yeah.
Because we don't provide transportation for our transfer students. And for those parents, that really is a jaunt to get back over on the side and to provide transportation. We try to get them as close as we can to, let's say, Northwoods is on that side because, certainly Ms. Hamilton is fabulous about taking any students she can. But then we also, at that point, we're looking at our overall numbers and the classroom, and we were trying to keep our numbers low, knowing that kids were going to go virtual, that would probably jump back into the regular classroom. But we did, we opened the floodgates, but I think the majority of those parents, it really had to do with transportation.
that was a full conversation with our leadership team, particularly at the elementary level, because they were worried that if they filled up the spots that they had for in-person instruction, because, part of it's social distancing, so those keep the class size manageable, then flooded, all those virtual kids just flooded back in, and then, class sizes are not where they need to be for social distancing, all of that was discussed, but we just didn't have that problem because we didn't see them coming in, it's weird. One district in the region, Tulsa, were 700 students down. So when I say 140-ish to 160, they're like so it was everybody. So I think we're gonna learn a lot once this is the dust settles. I think we're gonna look back and we're gonna discover a lot. It's like, how come COVID affects you differently than you? Well, we don't know that because we don't have all the data. I think that we're gonna look back at some point and discover why enrollment fluctuated like it did and why there were pockets of people. I don't know, I don't claim to be an expert necessarily on human behavior, but I do know that people are, one of the biggest fears of a person is fear of death, right? So my health is super important to me. So I think you see this element of people being okay, satisfied with, I really don't want that school gig right now because I don't want to be sick. So I don't know, I wish I had more
Me
thought.
personally, I would like for the kids to come over here and then the parents like the learning that the kids are getting from our district, and they go, you know what, let's go look at Sand Springs, and let's see what we could do to move over to Sand Springs. And then just have the snowball effect of,
I agree.
they come in, and they tell their friends how great Sand Springs is, and they move over to Sand Springs, and we grow the community.
That has happened with the smaller district bias that we had.
The other part I would say, and I said this publicly too, in Randover, in say chamber arenas, just kind of different audiences, housing continues to be, in my opinion, a little bit of a hindrance in terms of drawing people over as well. So I think there's a lot of growth potential. I think Sand Springs is getting a lot of looks. But I also know that folks coming over struggle with purchasing a house. Because it's pretty limited in terms of what we have to offer. And so that, I had a conversation with very prominent member of the community who said, like their son wanting to come and move here and come to Sand Springs and couldn't because he couldn't find the housing that he wanted. And so, you know, I've preached a lot about kind of that young professional close to downtown. If you're officing down there, why would you not choose? And just the housing development. So that's been, in my opinion, take it or leave it. And I think that hinders us.
Sure, but, you know, but you see, I don't know what, Peoria, and you see, I mean, if you haven't been in those houses, they're like Cracker Jack boxes.
Right,
But the people move in and they renovate. I mean, there's
right.
probably 1,000 houses in Sand Springs, that neighborhood that can do the exact same thing. It takes one person
Yeah.
or two, it takes one person to make the yard look beautiful and the
Right.
house to be pretty. And then the next person comes by and goes, you know what, I can buy the house next to it for a steal.
Right.
And I can turn it to the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we need to be doing. We need to be,
I hear that a lot, Superintendent Dirty, from new hires that, so I'm always trying to get them information about neighborhoods and kind of their range or whatever, and, or even just a place to rent, because they'll be here for a year and they want to make sure this is where they're gonna stay. And, I mean, it's hard. It's hard to find places.
oh, yeah, that was good.
And we talk about that all the time. And so that's a frustration on my part too, because as we try to attract, you know, we have a 3-pronged system. We have a city, a chamber, and a school, and it takes all of us as a unit to attract people. And it's like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do we, you know, can we increase commerce if you don't have the population of people to support? And so I feel like we're getting there. And I feel like there are folks in the city that are motivated to see that happen. We just got to stay the course, you know, let's stay the course and keep working really hard to make ourselves what it needs to be. And we need to be what the district of choice. I agree with 100%, and we'll get there. The pandemic slowed it down a tad probably. But we were having these same conversations with housing in chamber last year, and then March hit, and it didn't go further than just a conversation. So that was brought up again, and so keep your fingers crossed.
Yeah, well, you know, everything downtown is helping. I mean, you know, we don't have the restaurants here that attract a lot of people, but 15 minutes to downtown and you've got all the restaurants for downtown. And you know, you go anywhere to try to get to a restaurant in Tulsa and it's 15 minutes.
Right.
Time wise, the same amount of time. Maybe a few more miles, but time wise, same way to get downtown.
And you know, what's funny about that, I got an unsolicited call from the Tulsa Chamber, random, saying, hey, we want to come film at your STEM center. We understand you're doing great things with WebCo and your internship program. We want to come not market us, but we want to come showcase here for that strategy with their business folks, with what they're doing with the Tulsa Chamber. And I didn't ask for that. I got a phone call because they're seeing it. And so, you know, that sounds like a little bit of smidgen of I don't know, marketing or whatever, but there was not another district that was in. So people see it. It's just, all those costs have to work simultaneously together to do what we're visioning to do. I mean, we're going to stop now.
I think that turnpike is going to help out.
I heard. And that concludes my report. It was a little bit long-winded, that's okay. Like the question. Now you're thinking, that's typical, so I'll take it. I'll take it. So I'm going to go back to one that makes sense. You are ready. Yes, you mean wrong. So very similar to what we see every month. I would bring up number 18 because this would be the beginning of the retirement season for us. So here we go. I will say, Kristen and I were talking the other day about how many positions we have to fill in the 356. I don't have an explanation for that. We're reporting to our colleagues how many open positions do you have? I'm like, none, we don't have any. So I never get hyper worried about it, but 'tis the season. This is also the 3-year 5 teacher raises, FYI, which means that if I've been waiting to retire until I get my high salary for retirement, this could be the year we see some retirements from people that have hit that 3-year. And I have to tell you, after this year, some of them retired. And I get that. It's a lot of stamina to make it through this year. So we'll see, but I just want to bring that to your attention. There's a couple on there. Well, all of them actually have just been amazing people. Couple of positions, well, actually, I think one is already out there posted. That would be our special education teacher name, so I think it might be middle school and middle school. But want to bring that to your attention. Item number 22, just so you know, is a continuation of our service agreement with ECT, which is our HVAC company. We've extended the service contract for another year, which is allowed for the initial contract agreement. And really, most of that, rest of it is pretty typical. I will mention item number 23, and that's out-of-state travel request for the volleyball team to summer camp in Missouri, which happens, I believe, in July. Interestingly, we've approved, thank you for approving out-of-state travel for some of our activities this year, because you easily could have said, like many other boards did, no. What has happened through the course of the year, our baseball team tournament just got canceled because in Arizona, they decided to cancel the tournament. So it wasn't even a decision necessarily that we had to make to go or not to go. Frankly, I'm sad for the boys because that's a fun trip. A lot of times that kind of that capstone of their senior year, and it's disappointing. Our dance team is set to go to Florida in April. They pushed out. We talked about that last month, so we'll see. They have a virtual option. I talked through with a parent about why we're approving out-of-state travel. Are you kidding? And I said, what if your child is a senior? And so we talked through that and, came to an agreement. So we'll see. I mean, we're a little at the mercy of the powers that be and the situation we're in, unfortunately. And so some of those things that I like to have full control over, I had to learn to let go of that control and not be a control freak like I can be. And y'all know that. So good learning personal lesson for me. I've heard that.
I'll turn that back to you and, Rod and whoever else is involved in those decisions as well, because it's not just boards that are not allowing the students to have restrictions. And I'm thankful that you've kept that door open for our students and those groups.
For me, and I don't know right or wrong. I mean, you go into something unknown and for the territory and you think, I hope I make the right decision. And then, for me, I spend a lot of time in a lot of spiritual investment, trying to figure that out. And I just watched our seniors last year lose a lot of, work their whole life to have this end product called the senior year. And it's made up of a combination of a lot of experiences that our students get to have. And so, whether it was right or wrong, we put protocols in place to make things happen and we allowed it to happen. And
Well, my humble but accurate opinion is it's the right deal, and that we're allowing, like, if the opportunity's there, you're allowing to do.
I think so too. But again, you take a lot of criticism because there are others that would vehemently disagree with that. So it's what I think is right. I will say this, we'll stay the course. By natural consequences, the wrestling tournament, I believe on Christmas break, I want to say period, because I could be wrong about that. It got canceled by nature of, COVID, and baseball now is canceled because of COVID. So our cheer team chose to go virtual in their competition in February, which is what they're going to do. So I don't know, these are hard, tough decisions, and you just want to make the environment and experiences for kids, for students, the best it can be. And that's, I have to stay focused on making sure, block out the noise, what's best for kids, and that's what we try to do. So anyway, those are the only two that I'll point out.
Well, I know 2 seniors went last week or week before.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
to the NWA welding competition.
Yes.
And they went with their parents because the, advisor, and it wasn't Evans, didn't put the paperwork in time to get out of state travel.
Yeah.
So, but they won the whole thing.
It's so really good. We were in the net. I'm so proud of them. And they're just good kids.
Oh, yeah, they're all shooting teams, us.
Well, we're gonna celebrate them at a board meeting, but one of them was on my superintendent advisory last year and they were telling me, what all they were interested in. And this kid had skill sets that normally kids don't have, like they can weld, they can, I don't even know what all the video drums like, you are amazing, can you?
Which one, the
Oh, I need to ask you that.
Reese,
Reese,
long hair?
yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, he's my favorite.
Yeah,
He's not my favorite, but I've done it. I see all
he's buddy.
Did you practice welding? Did he weld better than you?
well, I tried to simulate, they're terrible, but they're impressive people.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And that gets me excited. And when I see that kind of success, no, we didn't get to give them that out-of-state travel, but thank you, the father that took them, because they needed to go, excuse me, to go. And then the success, it's amazing. So I'm gonna stop there. So that's all in the consent that I would bring to your attention.
Any more questions?
Make a motion to accept consent agenda as. So, second.
A motion and a second, a vote please.
Then,
Aye.
Mullins,
Aye.
Hubble,
Aye.
Wagner,
Aye.
Wakers.
Aye. Okay, action items.
Can we combine 24 and 26?
You can.
I'll make a motion that we move into executive session to discuss employment of individuals and superintendent evaluation.
Second.
Motion and a second, vote please.
Then,
Aye.
Hubble,
Aye.
Wagner,
Wait.
Y'all don't go nowhere.
Don't let.
I know, I did all for all my education.
well, wait, negatives make a positive.
Obviously, he didn't go to school answer.
Well, right, good. You're right. I did not want to do that.
Everybody's still here.
Not better to say, but
15 down low.
I'm planning to say the 30 of the job.
within March.
Okay.
Okay, we have great discussion, environment, discussing employment, and superintendent evaluation, no votes are taken, so that puts us at the full employment. Yes, so, yeah. Okay.
Make a motion to accept item 25.
Motion and a second to vote, please.
Ken?
Aye.
Colin?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
Wyman?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, number 27, proposed approval of the Sand Springs Public Schools calendar. So this would be the calendar that was proposed last month, with no changes. And I think the board approval tonight. There is a green paper in your file because we did not put days to hour notification, but we need to add that in the minutes, which allows us to translate into hours to be able to bank snow days. So, if you all, are going to make the motion to approve the calendar for the 2021-22 school year, if you follow the written, green sheet to make that motion, that would be fabulous.
I'll make a motion to approve the Sand Springs Public Schools calendar for the 2021-2022 school year and the days to hour notification.
Second.
Motion and a second, vote please.
Ken?
Aye.
Mullins? Noggle?
Aye.
Wyman?
Aye.
Wagers?
Aye.
Want to prove I can read? A plus.
Okay, number 28, action to approve personal business meeting minutes for school year. So I want to give a little explanation to this one. This will be an amendment to our policy for leave. And the reason we're asking for an amendment, it won't be officially put in our policy book because it will expire June 30th of this year. But if you recall, the first release bill for coronavirus had in it what's called a family first policy for 2 weeks or 80 hours of sick leave that expired December 31st. And what we're asking the board to approve is the ability for us to continue that leave through the end of June, this fiscal year, so June 30th. So that folks that didn't use COVID leave last semester, but would incur a problem with COVID, could still access that paid leave. And so it doesn't mean you get 10 more days. It just means if I haven't exhausted those 10 days, I can continue that until it moves. So we're asking for that approval for the short term of the semester, basically.
I'm comfortable with that. I'll make a motion to approve item number 28.
Second.
Motion and a second. A vote, please.
Ken?
Aye.
Mullins?
Aye.
Noggle?
Aye.
Wyman?
Aye.
Wagers?
Okay, item 29. So 29 is we need that approval tonight as well. It's not a first read. It would be an approval tonight. This was a result by our federal monitoring with title programming. These are policies that are required by law. So these are the representatives of OSSBA, and this comes complete with a complaint resolution as well. And so this is something that was brought to our attention because we were monitored with federal programs this year.
Make a motion to approve item number 21-9, the following policies: DAAC, Federal Programs Complaint Resolution, and DAACE, Investigative Report on Administration of Federal Programs.
I'll second.
Okay, vote. Or, please. I have a motion, second. A vote, please.
Ken?
Aye.
Mullins?
Aye.
Noggle?
Aye.
Wyman?
Aye.
Wagers?
Aye. Item number 30. Item number 30 is, that annual, meeting of the bond sale. So as you know, that, we do this yearly, typically in March, so that we can sell bonds with board that the community has approved, so that we can receive our bond funds.
around May. So we set that date for March the 9th at noon in the old board room in the administration building. So back where we held board meetings several years ago. So March 9th at noon, with approval, I'll ask Michelle to send you a reminder on the calendar so that you have it.
Will Tom be at the meeting? Because in the letter, he said they didn't come to these, but he thought about just.
I believe he'll be there. Greg, do you know? Chuck, Tom.
Tom's always there.
I think he'll be there.
The operator's always there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
March 9th,
March 9th, yes, sir.
then noon.
That's a Tuesday.
They provide a line.
Yeah. why the
I did not, I mean, I just, I don't know, because
I haven't gone that far.
Because it's not-
Absolutely, like.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, well, never mind, I'll talk about lunch today. We can have a whole, open discussion about where we're getting the feet. Yeah, but we don't have to hear about it. It is after 9 o'clock.
We can motion on that.
We don't.
Okay.
We need one. I'll make a motion that we have a special meeting to consider, take action on a resolution determining the maturity and setting a date of March the 9th at noon to sell general obligation bonds. As notified item number 30.
Second.
Motion and a second, vote please.
I have,
Oh, your question.
yeah. Can you write down with lunch, please?
I will open my motion to say that.
Steak medium rare.
Okay, vote please.
Dan,
Aye.
Mullen, Noble,
Aye.
Wyman, Rogers.
Item number 31.
I feel like we might typically put this in consent agenda, but I don't know if we did or not, but basically it's the ERED bid for the filing that will happen soon. It's just that contract to, support broadband internet on network management. This company used to be called Beasley, I believe. And they changed the name of it, so we, same people, under a different name.
Make a motion to approve item number 30.
Great.
Motion and a second, vote please.
Dan,
Aye.
Mullen, Noble,
Aye.
Wyman, Rogers.
Aye. And item number 32.
That would be, a vendor that we're changing a vendor actually, and we're incorporating web filtering and classroom management software into one component under this new vendor. So again, this is a recommendation by, please, for the next year.
They can approve item 32.
I'll second.
Do you have a question?
Motion and a second, vote please.
Dan,
Aye.
Mullen,
Aye.
Noble,
Aye.
Wyman,
Aye.
Rogers.
Aye. Okay, review business. Any matter not known about or not within reasonable foreseen prior to the posting for this meeting.
No, ma'am.
Any announcement?
I only one that I know mentioned before, but, Ms. Franz, who worked for district for several years, she'll help the bill pass away, I think, but his services are tomorrow at 10, so just.
Well, this event about Dr. and Keith Ballard, we've all seen the story about Dr. Ballard and the challenges right now.
Absolutely. He's my mentor during the AASO superintendent's program last year, and he's just lots of wisdom. And I've learned so much. Yeah. So, thank you.
I make a motion with adjourn. Second.
Motion and a second, vote please.
Dan,
Aye.
Noble, Wyman,
You know what?